He was 18 years old when they strapped him to death row. 37 years later, DNA proved what he'd been screaming all along. He was innocent. But here's the twisted part. The evidence that could have freed him existed the entire time. They just didn't want to look. This is the story of Robert DuBoise and the junk science that stole his life. The year is 1983. Tampa, Florida. August heat pressing down like a wet blanket. Barbara Grams was 19 years old. Brown hair, bright smile. She worked at a local restaurant, the kind where regulars knew her by name. On August 19th, she clocked out around 1 a.m., walked home alone, never made it. The next morning, a delivery driver found her body behind a medical building on Nebraska Avenue. She'd been beaten, raped, murdered, blood pooled on the concrete, already baking in the Florida sun. On her left cheek, investigators noticed something. A mark, reddish, irregular, about 2 inches wide. The medical examiner leaned in close, squinted, made a decision that would destroy a teenager's life. Bite mark. The Tampa Police Department had a problem. No witnesses, no fingerprints, no DNA testing in 1983. Just a dead girl and a panicked city demanding answers. So they called in an expert, Dr. Richard Souviron, a forensic odontologist, a tooth doctor who claimed he could match bite marks to specific people with scientific certainty. Souviron told detectives to start collecting teeth impressions, molds, dental records. "Bring me suspects," he said. "I'll tell you who did it." Officers canvassed the neighborhood, talked to locals, asked around. Someone mentioned a name, Robert DuBoise. Just a kid, 18 years old, long hair, thin frame. He hung around the area sometimes. Caused problems, they said. Nothing specific, just a feeling. That feeling was enough. What happened next sent an innocent teenager to death row based on nothing but teeth. Detectives showed up at DuBoise's door. September 1983. He was cooperative. Answered every question. He didn't know Barbara Grams. Never met her. Had no connection to her whatsoever. But when they asked him to come down to the station, he said yes. When they asked for a dental impression, he opened his mouth. They pressed cold dental compound against his teeth. The material hardened, pulled away, left a perfect mold of his dentition. The specific arrangement of his teeth, every ridge and gap captured in plaster white stone. Dr. Souviron placed a mold next to photographs of the mark on Barbara's cheek. He studied them under bright lights, rotated them, compared angles. Then he made his determination. Match. Robert DuBoise was arrested immediately. Handcuffs clicking shut on wrists that had never hurt anyone. No other physical evidence. No DNA. No blood. No fingerprints. No witnesses. Just a tooth expert saying his teeth matched a mark on a dead girl's face. But the prosecution needed more. Juries don't convict on expert testimony alone. They need a confession, a story, something that makes it real. Enter the jailhouse informant. What this prisoner said next guaranteed a death sentence. Robert sat in Hillsborough County Jail awaiting trial. Scared, 18, insisting he was innocent. In that same jail, another inmate watched him, listened to him, took notes. His name was Claude Butler, career criminal, facing serious time. The kind of prisoner who knows how to work the system, how to trade information for freedom, how to say exactly what prosecutors want to hear. Butler claimed that one day in the rec yard, DuBoise confessed everything, described the murder, admitted the rape, showed remorse. Every detail perfectly aligned with what police believed happened. It was a lie, completely fabricated. But Butler had something to gain. His potential life sentence reduced to 5 years, in exchange for testimony. The trial moved forward like a freight train. 1985, 2 years after Barbara's murder. The courtroom smelled of old wood and nervous sweat. Robert sat at the defense table, his thin shoulders hunched forward, while prosecutors built their case on 2 pillars, Dr. Souviron's bite mark analysis and Claude Butler's jailhouse confession. Dr. Souviron took the stand, confident, authoritative. He explained how bite marks are unique, how his analysis was scientific, reliable. He showed the jury comparison photos, the mark on Barbara's cheek, the mold of Robert's teeth. Perfect match, he testified, to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty. The defense had no counter-expert, no way to challenge the science. In 1985, bite mark analysis was accepted in courts across America, treated like fingerprints, like DNA, like truth. Then Butler testified, described the confession, made it sound genuine, remorseful, real. The jury deliberated. Guilty, murder, rape. The judge didn't hesitate. Death penalty. Robert DuBoise was 18 years old when they sentenced him to die. He would spend the next 3 years on death row, waiting for an execution that never came. Death row in Florida is a special kind of hell. Concrete walls, fluorescent lights that never shut off, the constant hum of ventilation systems, the smell of industrial cleaner and fear. Robert lived in a 6-by-9-foot cell, 23 hours a day, alone with his thoughts and his innocence. The prison needed electricians. Robert had some skills. They put him to work maintaining the electrical systems throughout the facility. Everything except one system, the electric chair, the very machine designed to kill him. Supervisors ordered him to service it, check the wiring, maintain the equipment that would send 2,000 volts through his body until his heart stopped. Robert refused. Quiet defiance. I won't maintain the machine you're planning to kill me with. They threw him in solitary confinement. Once, twice, weeks in isolation for refusing to prepare his own execution device. But something shifted. In 1988, the Florida Supreme Court reviewed his case. They found issues with his death sentence. Not his guilt, just the sentencing. They reduced it to life in prison. Life plus 15 years. He wouldn't die by execution. He would die behind bars. Slowly, year by year, decade by decade. But Robert refused to give up, and in 2006, he found a glimmer of hope. DNA testing had revolutionized criminal justice. Exonerations were happening across the country. Innocent people walking free after decades. Robert filed a motion for post-conviction DNA testing in August 2006. His hands probably shook as he filled out the paperwork. This was his chance, his shot at freedom. In 2008, he got a hearing. The courtroom smelled the same as it did 23 years earlier. Same wood, same tension. His lawyer argued that DNA testing on the rape kit could prove his innocence, exclude him, show the jury got it wrong. The court clerk stood up, cleared their throat, delivered news that landed like a punch. All evidence from the trial was destroyed in 1990, 5 years after his conviction. The rape kit, the biological samples, everything gone, incinerated or tossed in a landfill somewhere. The judge denied his request, reasoned that even if other evidence excluded Robert, the state's theory was that multiple people committed this crime. Excluding one perpetrator wouldn't prove innocence. Case closed. Hope extinguished. Robert went back to his cell, back to his electrician duties, back to maintaining systems in a prison that had become his entire world. Years passed. 2010, 2015, 2018, his mother got older. His sister kept writing letters. The world outside moved on. Technology advanced. Innocence Project started gaining momentum nationwide. Then in 2018, someone decided to take another look, and everything changed. The Conviction Review Unit in Hillsborough County was newly formed. State Attorney Andrew Warren wanted to re-examine questionable cases. The Innocence Project flagged Robert's case, urged him to review it. 2 leading causes of wrongful conviction screamed from the file: bite mark evidence and jailhouse informant testimony. The CRU agreed to investigate. First, they brought in a different forensic odontologist, Dr. Adam Freeman. He reviewed the original photographs, the ones Dr. Souviron used in 1985. He studied the mark on Barbara's cheek, measured it, analyzed it with modern understanding. His conclusion shattered everything. That's not a bite mark. The injury on Barbara's cheek was not caused by human teeth. It couldn't be. The pattern was wrong. The depth inconsistent. Modern science had moved on. The American Board of Forensic Odontology had revised its standards. Bite mark matching was junk science. Unreliable. Discredited. At least 33 known wrongful convictions stemmed from bite mark analysis. Robert was number 34. But they needed more than discredited forensics. They needed DNA. The problem? All the evidence was destroyed in 1990. Or so they thought. Investigators started digging and found something that shouldn't exist. Deep in storage at the Hillsborough County Medical Examiner's office, buried in boxes collecting dust for 37 years, someone found slides. Microscope slides from Barbara Graham's original autopsy in 1983. Biological samples. DNA. The rape kit they thought was destroyed, parts of it survived. In 2020, forensic scientists ran DNA testing using technology that didn't exist in 1983. PCR analysis. STR profiling. They extracted DNA from the samples, built a genetic profile of whoever left biological evidence on Barbara Graham's. Then they compared it to Robert DuBoise's DNA. Exclusion. Complete exclusion. Robert DuBoise could not have been the source of that DNA. Scientifically impossible. Then they ran it through CODIS, the National DNA Database, looking for a match, looking for the real killer. They found two names, Amos Robinson, Abram Scott, both serving life sentences for a different murder. The DNA evidence pointed directly at them. On August 27, 2020, after 13,505 days in prison, Robert DuBoise walked free. The Florida sun hit his face. Bright, warm, unfiltered, no bars between him and the sky. His mother waited outside Hardy County Correctional Institute, his sister Harriet, both crying, reporters everywhere, cameras flashing. Robert was 56 years old. He went in at 18. He'd lost 37 years, nearly 4 decades, his entire youth, his 20s, his 30s, his 40s, gone. I prayed to God every day and hoped for it, he said, his voice cracking. I never lost faith that today would come. 1 month later, in September 2020, the state attorney officially dropped all charges. Robert stood in court again, same building where they sentenced him to death 35 years earlier. This time, different words. Exonerated, innocent, free. There are really true-hearted people in these offices now, Robert said. It's been amazing. I'm just very grateful to all of you. But freedom came with a cruel twist. Robert discovered that Florida had one final punishment waiting for him. Florida has a compensation law. Exonerees can receive $50,000 for every year they were wrongfully imprisoned. For Robert, that would be $1.85 million. Not enough to replace 37 stolen years, but something, acknowledgement, restitution. He applied, filled out the paperwork, submitted his claim, denied. Florida has a clean hands provision, the only state in America with this rule. If you have any prior unrelated felony convictions, you're ineligible for compensation, any prior conviction at all. When Robert was 17, before Barbara Graham's was murdered, he was sentenced to probation for minor offenses, possessing a stolen bike, entering an unlocked, vacant house, kid stuff, stupid mistakes. Those convictions from when he was a teenager made him ineligible for compensation as a 56-year-old exonerated man. The state stole 37 years of his life based on lies and junk science, then refused to pay him a single dollar because of a stolen bike from when he was 17. So Robert decided to fight back one more time. In 2021, Robert filed a federal lawsuit, not asking, demanding. He sued the city of Tampa for police officers who investigated his case. Dr. Richard Souviron, the forensic dentist who sent him to death row. The suit alleged fabricated evidence, official misconduct, conspiracy with jailhouse informant Claude Butler. The city fought it. 3 years of litigation, depositions, discovery. During his deposition, Dr. Souviron admitted something stunning. He no longer believes bite marks can be matched directly to an individual person. The science he used to convict Robert, he now says it was unreliable. Unscientific. Wrong. Too late for an apology, but perfect for a lawsuit. On January 11th, 2024, the city settled. On February 15th, the Tampa City Council voted unanimously to approve it. $14 million. One of the largest wrongful conviction settlements in Florida history. Councilmember Luis Vieira's voice was steady but emotional. This was a big wrong. I hope and pray this settlement will give him some measure of comfort. Robert wasn't there for the vote, but he released a statement later. I spent 37 years in prison for a crime I was totally innocent. This is what happens when police focus on the wrong person, make up evidence to fit their theory, and don't investigate to find the truth. Lives are ruined and communities are less safe. $14 million. Divided over 3 years. After legal fees. After taxes. After everything. It breaks down to about $378,000 per year of wrongful imprisonment. Can you put a price on 37 years? On missing your mother's birthdays? On not being there when your sister got married? On watching the world change through prison bars while everyone you knew lived their lives without you? Robert has been clear. People think I'm walking around with $14 million in my pocket. I'm not, and no amount of money makes what happened right. But the story doesn't end with Robert's freedom. Amos Robinson and Abram Scott, the two men whose DNA was found on barbograms, are still in prison, both serving life sentences for a different murder. In 2020, they were charged with first-degree murder in Barbara's case. They're awaiting trial. Meanwhile, the Conviction Review Unit and the Innocence Project launched an audit, the first systematic review of bite mark cases ever undertaken by a prosecutor's office. They're examining every Hillsborough County conviction that relied on bite mark evidence. How many other Robert DuBoises are sitting in Florida prisons right now? How many other teenagers have been sentenced to death based on junk science? How many other lives stolen because a tooth doctor claimed he could match bite marks with scientific certainty? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers honored Robert as part of the NFL's Inspire Change initiative, created custom cleats with his name, the words clean hands painted across them, spotlighting the injustice of Florida's compensation laws. Robert works now, lives with family, tries to rebuild a life that was stolen from him. He maintains that quiet strength he developed over 37 years, that refusal to service his own execution, that insistence on innocence when everyone said he was guilty. Since 1989, DNA evidence has led to 375 exonerations nationwide. 375 innocent people who spent a combined 5,284 years in prison for crimes they didn't commit. Robert is one of them. But how many more are still inside? The average wrongfully convicted person serves 14.6 years before exoneration. Robert served 37, more than double, because evidence was destroyed, because the system fought his DNA testing, because Florida's compensation law punished him for being poor as a teenager. Robert DuBoise spent 37 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit. His conviction was based on discredited bite mark evidence and the lies of a jailhouse informant who traded his testimony for a reduced sentence. When DNA finally proved his innocence, the state refused to compensate him because of the stolen bike from when he was 17. His case exposes how junk science destroys lives, how the system fights against truth even when the evidence is screaming, how exonerees are abandoned the moment they walk free. That's why your voice matters. Subscribe to stay informed about these stories that expose the cracks in our justice system. Hit the bell so you never miss an update on wrongful convictions, exonerations, and the fight for reform. And drop a comment. Should states be required to compensate exonerees regardless of prior convictions? Florida is the only state with a clean hands provision. Should it be abolished? Next time, we're diving into another case where the system ignored evidence for decades while an innocent person suffered behind bars. You won't want to miss it. Robert DuBoise is free, but justice delayed is justice denied. And 37 years is more than a delay. It's a lifetime.